Coming up in this episode,
the people that shot Charlie Kirk did not succeed. They've created millions of Charlie Kirks, millions of people out there that are like, you know what? I'm going to start having conversations now.
You know, people like to claim free speech, but they don't like the consequences, you know, and that just reeks of irresponsibility. It's like, yeah, we all have free speech, but if you tell your wife she looks fat and ugly, you're going to end up in a frying pan, you know, so.
You are now listening to the Here for the Truth podcast, hosted by Joel Rafidi and Yerasimos.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Here for the Truth podcast, the home of the grounded truth seeker. And that really is a premise for this conversation here. I think we should keep this intro short because this is a 2-hour masterclass on discernment, on being in the world, on navigating the truth-seeking process, on the importance of prioritizing the individual, and so much more in light of situations that have occurred recently, including the assassination of Charlie Kirk, in which there has been just monumental information, perspectives, opinions, ideas, trajectory shifts storming all around us. And it's very easy for the individual to get lost in that process.
I mean, I agree. I mean, I thought we're keeping this short. It was great. I mean, these guys are epic. I have the deepest respect for David and Matt, and I'm so happy that we had a chance to bring them on together. And it's just a reminder too for myself, you know, just sitting there, like listening to them speak, like really getting clear on why I know, like how I know what I know and where my beliefs come from and how do I determine what the truth is, and to really check myself and to be honest with myself in regards to like how much time have I spent investigating something.
Yep.
And really like reading books and looking at things from many perspectives and angles, while at the same time staying as grounded as I can within myself. And again, it's like something I brought up later in the episode. Like if you're honest with yourself and you haven't done the necessary legwork to figure out something, to investigate, to research, then you need to question whether or not you're even in a position to claim certainty on anything.
Yeah. Well said, man. Guys, later this month, David himself is our special guest Q&A inside our membership community, Friends of the Truth. So I want to plant that seed early. We are very close to that 100 member mark now, so lock in that $17 a month price if you do feel called to join us. And later this month, our members will have the opportunity to interact directly with David, ask him questions, and just come be privy to an incredible, intimate conversation with David himself. You can learn everything you need to know at hereforthetruth.com/FOTT when it comes to learning about our awesome membership community and all that it entails. Bear witness. All right, guys, today we're bringing together two returning voices who've each made their own powerful marks on Here for the Truth. We have David Whitehead, host of the Truth Warrior podcast, co-host of Unslaved alongside Michael Tessarian. This is his 11th appearance. David's a researcher, martial artist, and teacher who has spent decades investigating hidden history, philosophy, geopolitics, and the war on consciousness. And his work invites people to cultivate inner sovereignty, sharpen critical thinking, and reclaim personal power in a world that thrives on deception. And joining us as well is Matt Presti, here for his 4th time on the show. Matt is a musician, philosopher, teacher of universal law, and former president of the University of Science and Philosophy, the organization founded to continue the legacy of Walter and Leo Russell. Through his work, Matt emphasizes creativity, self-knowledge, and alignments with natural law as essential pathways for human freedom and spiritual evolution. And so together today, these guys bring decades of inquiry and experience into the psychological, spiritual, and cultural battlegrounds of our time. So this is the 3rd edition of the Truth Warrior Roundtable, and just an opportunity to challenge assumptions, expand perspectives, and really sharpen the tools we need to navigate these times. Gentlemen, welcome back to Here for the Truth.
Thanks for having us, guys.
An honor.
Absolute pleasure. All right. I guess let's just do a brief kind of check-in, and then we'll kind of get into the meat and bones. Matt, what's the 101 in your life recently, man?
Oh man, all kinds of good stuff. Taking care of the acreage, raising chickens. We got more little ladies, 5 little red hens. You know,
Nice.
that's fun. Amazing how much exercise you get just carrying after something, but it gets us off the couch. So, you know, working, a little bit of a job change in my life. So I'm doing construction right now, which is good because I've been working out of a chair for 11 years, excepting the year that I set up the art museum in Virginia for the Russells. But getting up and working with your body and moving around, I didn't realize how long it had been, you know, since I'd done manual labor, but it feels really good and I'm loving it, getting myself back into shape a little bit. So other than that, just doing great. Lori and I are enjoying the world, watching the shit show as everybody else is, you know, trying to make sense of it all. But, you know, again, just an honor to join you guys and catch up a little bit.
Awesome, man. So good to have you here and always good to see you. And David, what about yourself?
For me, yeah, I've been really working hard on my martial arts studio, spending a lot of hours in there. That's just exploding, training a kids teens team for some pretty big time competitions now. Wasn't what I expected, but that's the direction it went, and they're all just doing so good. Working with my wife, they're homeschooling the girls. They're just flying in so many different areas. It's pretty mind-blowing. Doing our morning breakfast philosophy discussions that are actually started by my oldest daughter, who just out of nowhere just had this real interest in philosophy. So we started talking about it. It was never something I pushed on her. It was just something she really got into. So I've been just enjoying being a dad, being a husband, learning some of the trades around the home, doing some renos, and then, yeah, surveying the madness and doing the best I can to document it and give people different ways of thinking about the events that are unfolding before us. So that's what I've been up to.
Yeah. David, how are you like, because, you know, your martial arts school is, you know, you reopened it, or I guess you opened a new one. Was it a couple of years ago now?
Yeah. So it's been a rocky ride. Like, I've been teaching martial arts a long time. We moved up to British Columbia in 2015 and immediately started working out of this local gym. And then that place basically got shut down during the lockdowns, and then immediately after it was converted into a homeless shelter, and then shortly after it was burned down. And there's not a lot of space out where I live for that kind of facility. So it took me like 2.5 years to find another spot that would be suitable to reopen. So I was closed. I was just doing my podcasting. And then we reopened in a temporary location and then finally moved to the location that we're at now, which is an absolute gem. It's out in I call it the secret dojo in the woods. And we're surrounded by nature. There's literally deers and rabbits and stuff running around the back. And we've got a turkey that lives next door. That's sort of our dojo mascot. And yeah, it's been really exploding ever since. It's a beautiful space and I absolutely love it. I can't wait to be there every single day. Amazing. And what I love about it the most is the hands-on work that I get to do and actually expressing the principles that I try to talk about and espouse every day on my show, and the stuff we've talked about. You guys are doing this great work in your communities with the work you've done with your show and bringing in the somatic intelligence and trying to help awaken people in that way. Well, I found the martial arts as a very hands-on, practical way of sort of indirectly introducing them to that very same thing. And just watching kids turn into winners is like my new obsession. So that's what I do. I do it with adults as well. And it's truly a joy in my life. And I've never been more motivated and reinvigorated in my martial arts career. I've been training like a beast every day, 6 days a week, and teaching all the time, and just absolutely loving it. So that's what I've been doing, yeah.
Amazing, man. All right. Well, a lot has happened recently.
Indeed.
David, do you want to kick us off and kind of give us the lay of the land in terms of what you're seeing in, I guess, the truthosphere and beyond at the moment? It seems there's a lot of strong voices, a lot of strong opinions, a lot of polarization, a lot of confusion, and just more than ever, it seems as though people are in a daze in terms of where to turn to for truth right now.
Yeah, I think we're all feeling it. I mean, we got to be honest. It's a tough fog of war that we've been in for about a decade now. For those of us that have been at this a while, you guys all know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And it's to be expected that people are going to fall off the wagon of reason and sanity and are going to be pulled into a lot of manipulated information. Psychological operations are rampant. They're financed. They're running all over social media, mainstream media. And the issue is that it has definitely leaked into what we call the truther sphere or alternative research community. I think it's been there for a long time, actually. And it's great to actually get a bird's eye view of who's who. And we're getting a real exposure of truth, all right. And I think when we started thinking about this from the age that we're in, of sort of like an age of revealing or the age of awakening, or what do you want to call it, where the veil is being lifted. It's been prophesized about, it's been predicted by many. And the main way I look at that is just anybody that has any sort of grasp of how human consciousness ebbs and flows in relation to these natural and unnatural events can understand the predictive quality of that and how that can be achieved. And I think that we're seeing it. And the mask isn't just coming off for the big government and the deep state and the Illuminatis and the roundtables and all that. It's actually coming off for every living human being right now. And we're seeing it in full blast. And when the assassination of Charlie Kirk took place, which really hit me very hard, as it did many, I think we got to see another level on both extreme ends of what you would call the political spectrum, as bastardized as that has become. We've seen all of the truth coming out, and all you got to do, this is something Michael Tsarian has always said that stuck with me. Very wise statement. He's like, there's not a lot of things you need to do. You just got to keep the cameras rolling and take notes and be in an observation mindset. And so that's what I've been doing. And wow, are we getting an education on human consciousness right now?
Yeah, man, absolutely. Well shared. Matt, any commentary from you in this capacity? And also, yeah, man, how were you impacted, I guess, by the Charlie Kirk assassination, and any prevalent thoughts on that front too?
Well, the reactions were quite telling. That was an education, a lot of reactionary rhetoric. And then, people like to claim free speech, but they don't like the consequences of it, and that just reeks of irresponsibility. It's like, yeah, we all have free speech, but if you tell your wife she looks fat and ugly, you're going to end up in a frying pan, So you got to have the foresight to know what, the effects of your speech are going to be. It's called responsible speech, but I'm all for it 100%. But seeing, what I saw and then the complaining afterwards was very telling. It's very childish. People don't really understand what it means to be responsible with your speech when it comes to certain political, especially alignments that people have. So that was an education, just kind of watching that whole thing fly apart. And the response of the right was interesting too, because, there's this very slippery slope where the left and the right can become one or the other in their calls for censorship and whatnot. So there's that responsibility angle too. So really, it was just for Charlie Kirk, it was witnessing free speech, tested to its limits, which is a whole psychological lesson in and of itself, spiritual lesson, mental lesson, because speech does and can invoke physical reactions and physical violence. So in that sense, you see how the media in the United States especially frames the conservative movement as Hitler, as the devil. It's everything horrible, everything horrendous. And then people act on that, yet there's no responsibility for the people that say these things that invoke, violence and things like that, which I think, is healthy for humanity to see that, because now we know that these kinds of things, that political assassinations, other things, generally are caused by speech and rhetoric, which then crosses the line into violence, into some kind of physical action. So that's important for us all to look back and sit back and realize that, there are consequences to speech. So that was one of the big lessons that I've learned looking at this whole thing, and still continue to learn. It's an evolving, humanity will always evolve towards something, change, and and grow and hopefully learn. But I think that was a good lesson for the world to witness. And what I also witnessed out of that was people that have been quiet for all my life, family members, friends, are suddenly, they're like, fuck it, I'm going to start speaking out. I'm done being quiet. So that was healthy, because you don't want to hold that stuff in, and you want to be able to let it out. And if you get attacked on social media, because that's generally the reaction. I put a post out yesterday, I got attacked and I had to ban the guy because it went right to dick jokes or dick references. And I'm like, you can bring me down, you can bring somebody down to their level, but if they're an idiot, that makes you one too. It's sort of when the wise man and the fool argue, you can't tell the difference. So you also have to have healthy boundaries when you express an opinion, because not everyone's going to agree. The thought police come into your comment section or your forum and they start grading you and saying, you can't say this, and what happened to how you used to be, and blah, blah, blah. The judgments fly, but it shouldn't assuage your ability to communicate effectively and state your piece, no matter how unpopular it might be. You still need to express yourself, and that's a healthy exercise as well. So it's a lot about, lessons about communication and seeing how humanity comments back and forth, when things like tragedies like this happen, but it's all a learning experience.
Yeah. I think it's something that we do have to speak about, simply because of the wide-ranging observations and reactions to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Obviously, we'll find ourselves in some capacity connected to some form of truth or community. I loved your comment on my post recently, David, where you said, I have to come to realize there is no truth or community. There is truth, and then there are the ones who actually wish to seek it honestly and align with it. This process cannot be a collective activity. And obviously there's huge factions, which we're talking about Charlie Kirk at the moment, and we're talking about as if it was real. And there's huge factions that think that this thing actually is fake and staged, and people kind of disassociate and bypass the reality in many ways through just, throwing these things out the window. So I'll pass it back to you, David. Where are you at in terms of the official narrative that is coming forth?
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at it from so I started studying it intensely, and obviously I'm not sitting at the classified table, but just from watching what's been going on, and also understanding the psychology, which is what's always left at the door when people look at these events, that and if you understand that in most human beings, and in all of us, there's sort of like a basic settings function in our mind, that is that we want to evade trauma. We want to evade that which seems threatening to us, to our minds, to our bodies. It's a defensive instinct that's allowed us to survive on this planet as long as we have. And so it's to be understood as to, we understand where it comes from. But the fact that we have this faculty of reason, where we can observe that issue within our minds and realize, hey, evading reality is not always in my best interest. The instinct to evade reality might be there as an impulse, to protect your mind from traumatic events or whatever. But the fact that I have the ability to zoom out and observe myself doing that, and then correct course if it's actually better for my survival, for me to face reality and accept reality, and maybe take that as my operating principle, then, that is something that we're all observing in ourselves right now. Are you going to evade reality, or are you going to face reality and actually live in accordance with it? And so my first instinct is no longer, everything's fake. That's not my first instinct.
No.
Okay? My first instinct is, no, this kind of stuff should be expected to, nobody should be surprised by the Charlie Kirk assassination. Okay, that if you're surprised by that, and if you're surprised that it very well could be exactly what they're telling us in the official narrative, except for maybe what I think would be some other layers behind it. I don't think necessarily this guy was a lone gunman. I think these shooters and these people's minds have been groomed and prepared. But I honestly think I could very easily make the case, and of course we have the evidence that we have to make the case, that we are dealing with a pressure cooker situation by way of the real conspiracy, if people are looking for it, which is the waves and waves of propaganda that has been coming through the media, the education system, etc., by the forces that are seeking to ruin our society and change it drastically. And that pressure cooker, as they have predicted, and they understand the consciousness factor I'm talking about as well, I mean, the dark side, if you will, that this is going to turn out a whole generation of basically mindless NPC agents that will carry out, based on their emotional programming and their psychological program, to carry out violent events. And so whether this guy is part of some terror cell, which I actually think there's a lot of evidence we could get into about how that is most likely the case, that these shootings are organized at the top. But that doesn't mean the shooters themselves are aware of the layers of organization that are well above them. They're acting out of their emotional rage. They're acting out of their need to mete out the violence that they are committing within their own psyches on the world and on anybody that threatens their paradigm. And that condition is created by that pressure cooker situation that I think is the design. It is done by design. This is how communist takeovers happen. It's how they've happened historically. So we have historical precedents for these kind of events where the violence keeps picking up. The rhetoric from politicians, from celebrities, from media, from university professors, from clergy, from everybody, the rhetoric of, the other side is the most evil things we can possibly conjure up. And then they are oppressing you. And then you create the victim mentality, which is the real culprit. And then you don't need to take every single person and put them in a room and do MK Ultra programming on them and then send them out as some Manchurian candidate assassin the way people imagine.
Yeah.
You just need to change the water in the fish tank, and then the fish will behave accordingly. So I'm more in that camp, and I'm more in the camp that we are dealing with a very deeply embedded enemy within America and within the West that is seeking the ruin of Western civilization and seeking to replace it with this one seasoned dystopian totalitarian nightmare that we're seeing unfolding in different ways in different areas of Western civilization. Mm-hmm. And in America, it's particularly obvious because they are desperate to get rid of any of these politicians or people like Charlie Kirk who are out there trying to say, hey, we've got disagreements. We've been radically divided across this country. And so let's have conversations and let's do it peacefully. Let's do it respectfully. Yeah, we can take some jabs at each other here and there. We can have some fun with it. And that is just something that a totalitarian regime or a regime seeking totalitarian control can't have running around influencing the young. And so it's sort of a twist of dark irony and fate that you have a young person that came after Charlie, 22 years old is what we're told. And I think all the evidence points to the fact that, yeah, he was the one that shot him. I'm not into, Jew tunnels underneath the thing where they're popping out and shooting Charlie from the ground. I'm not into this whole thing that Israel did it and campaigned the whole thing. I think all that stuff is being funded as psychological operations to keep the pressure cooker going on the other side of the aisle and to keep fomenting this division in American society. So I would say, yeah, I would go with official story, except for the fact that it's not just the lone guy. I think this is an organized terror cell that has been embedded within America for a long time. I think they're grooming these kids out of universities and schools, whether they know it or not. I think the kids themselves believe they're just acting alone. And but at the same time, we're seeing a pattern of behavior, and it has to do with the ideology that has been pumped into their brains. And so, yeah, I'm not accepting what our so-called conspiracy movement is saying. I think it's amateur. I think it's jumping the gun. I think it's shock jock. And I think I know exactly who's funding it, and I know why they're doing it.
Yeah. I think it's something that, we've talked about often too, is that, we talk about observation and having the capacity to sit back and observe and be present and not jump to conclusions. And it's this whole duality and dance between certainty and uncertainty, and that like people don't have the capacity to just be like, I don't know. I'm uncertain right now. I'm gathering evidence. I'm being with my emotions, my mind, my body. And like, I don't need to proclaim the day after an event that I know exactly what's happening. Like,
yeah,
I mean, you all the time. I mean, even October 7th, it's like October 8th, everyone's coming out, telling everyone exactly what they think happened with the whole Israel-Palestine thing. And we see it over and over and over again. So again, it comes back to the whole consciousness piece and the psychological piece. Like, I mean, can't you just say, I don't know? And be okay with it?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you there, David. I'm curious what you make of like this Shakespearean letter, Shakespearean text exchange, "Dear lover," which seems to be a perfect confession to all the details that we heard about the event, where his rifle is, what he did. This perfect confession. Like where do you
shady to me.
where do you sit with the letter?
Well, I grew up around sort of some of those awkward theater kids and the Dungeons and Dragons crowd, and that didn't surprise me whatsoever. When you understand, the sort of online communities and the types of language that they use, they're all into like Skyrim lore and this kind of stuff. And so it's not a stretch that people think it is. Just because you wouldn't write a letter like that doesn't mean that I actually feel like our generation, like I'm 43. My generation is predominantly that age group of these influencers in our community that are the ones saying, no one writes like that. That's impossible. And it's like, how do you know, bro? You're totally disconnected from the youth. You have no idea what's going on in these chat rooms and these, Discord servers and how they communicate to each other. You also, the way you can also look at that, if you still don't want to accept that argument, before we jump to Kash Patel and the FBI wrote that as a psyop, before we get to that, there's another stage you could go to with that letter and the way that was written, or the confession, which is that it was written specifically to communicate something, right? To basically try to, because the whole accusation of the media, this is another indication you can look at, is how does the media respond, okay? That's always a great clue, because we know who funds them. We know what their agenda is that they started responding with the fact that this wasn't inspired by Democratic left-wing propaganda. This wasn't inspired by that ideology. This was right-wing. This was MAGA. This was the shooter's fathers were conservative. They were Republicans. So therefore, this is on you guys, you MAGA violent January 6ers who are just trying to cause insurrections and violence all over the country. This is the pot calling the kettle black, right? And so if that's the case, and it was thought that, hey, we're going to take Charlie out, and then we're going to try to blame his side for it. If that was the true agenda, then what you would do is write a letter that sounds like conservative people talking. And don't forget, this kid was raised by conservative parents. So if he's playing a mimicry when he's writing this letter, because this is all about taking a shot at his parents on a psychological level, it's about taking a shot at what he feels he's victimized by, which is this oppressive American right-wing conservative, whatever they've been told. And then you have the belief that you're dealing with Nazis and fascists. You can get some hints that they're writing in that sort of style. And so there's two ways of looking at it: awkward theater type, sort of nerd level kids that do actually communicate like that, or before we get to some big giant psychological conspiracy or psyop conspiracy by the FBI, we can also just understand that they're trying to frame the MAGA, the right, the people that are talking about American values. They're trying to frame them as being the ones responsible for all the violence. And you got that indication by what the media was saying immediately after and right up to this moment. So that's where I'm sitting with that.
Thanks for sharing, man. Matt, any thoughts you want to chime in here with?
Yeah, it's interesting to me that for decades we've had great researchers, G. Edward Griffin, John Stormer, none dare call it treason, going back to the 60s. Even the Russells wrote about communism in 1953. It's nothing new, as a political ideology and the way that it's evolved over the decades. And now you have sort of this look at government as, it's all in the same camp. Both ends of the wings are controlled by the same, body of the bird. In other words, there's no such thing as natural polarity or natural division or, divided political beliefs or views, that it's all fake, it's all made up, and it's all controlled by one so-called force. To believe that, you would have to discard the Griffins and the Stormers and the John Birches, you know. And how do you judge a system? You judge it. A system isn't. A system is what it does. Okay, so you can look at the 4 years of Biden and see what was done, and then where we are at this point, and it's almost 180 degrees. Don't agree with everything that's happening by the administration, but as things change, so do the way that they administrate and manage. But just to ignore decades of how this whole thing came into being, this monster called communism, you know, it's sort of having a rootless view of the world, even to the point where anything anybody posts, I fear the day will come when somebody will say, or everybody will say, that's got to be AI. It's not you any longer. So there's that end of the thing that we could end up on a downward spiral if, you know, AI becomes such that everybody thinks that anything that's written it can't be real. It must be AI.
Yep.
So there's that slippery slope there. But just, you know, with the reaction of how people, you know, on both sides of this issue, the ones that think it's fake, I just think it's sort of a get out of jail free card. I don't have to do the work of really looking into it. And that's not just this event. It's every event that has a political undertone to it. Mm-hmm. That's fake. That's fake. It's not real. It's very easy to say that.
Everything's theater.
Everything's theater. You're absolved of any responsibility. You're absolved of any pain, of trauma. You're resolved of depression. You're resolved of concern. You're resolved of compassion, of empathy, you know, and then it's an easy way out to me. Mm-hmm. And that can't be psychologically good for a society or for an individual. And I'm not saying dwell in the negativity all your life either. You have to come up for air. You have to know when to take a walk, get off the computer. But, you know, it's just the overall arching picture is you know, the way that people respond and act and think about things is a great lesson to witness as well. We can get a lot out of paying attention to how people react.
The whole theater thing is so amusing to me because as someone who trained as an actor for years, like you have people who've trained as an actor for years and they can't act. You know, like they're not very good. But yet on these staged operation, everyone is worthy of an Oscar. You know, these people that they've brought together. It's like, oh my God, the timing and Charlie Kirk and the way he brought his hands up and came down, like, oh my God, amazing. You get the Oscar Academy Award. He must have trained for years to die so well on camera. Like it's ridiculous to me. Yeah. Well, even just from that standpoint.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you there.
That's like, okay.
You're making such a good point. And the other thing too is like it's everything that you want to be fake can be fake, and everything you don't want to be fake is not fake. And now who gets to make these decisions, and who, you know, what level of research are you doing? These people are coming up with these theories. Guys, it's been 3 weeks since Charlie was shot. Can you believe it? Okay. 3 weeks, and everybody is Sherlock Bloody Holmes. Everybody is now an expert in ballistics. Everybody's an expert in angles, and the sound didn't sound right.
And blood spatter.
iPhone camera, fucking mic.
Everyone's an expert in how widows grieve.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is where, and I actually just kind of went scorched earth on this on Josh's show. Kind of had a bit of a debate over there. Love you, Josh. But this whole thing about going after the widow and trying to make her into something. I mean, let's just point out the elephant in the room when it comes to Erica Kirk, okay? I don't know her. I've never met her. There's so many potentials in reality that could exist beyond my comprehension. However, here's most likely the issue that everybody's having with Erica Kirk. Have you seen the woman? Is she not like a model walking? It's kind of like an Ivanka Trump or, Mrs. Trump there. Like an absolute supermodel, a strong woman, educated, eloquent. She's coming in. She's like, I'm going to take my husband's gauntlet and I'm going to keep it going. The strength that she demonstrated in that. And when you see strength, if you don't have strength, you can call it a psyop. If you see somebody that is beautiful and strong and confident and you don't have those qualities, and trust me, beauty isn't just physical features, okay? It's the way you behave. It's the way you carry yourself, right? If you don't have the qualities that you see somebody else exhibiting, it's so much easier to call it a psyop, a fake, a conspiracy, and everything else. And this has been going on forever. And anybody that's ever elevated themselves slightly above the herd, above the crowd, will understand what I'm talking about. That when you even think about reaching upwards a little bit to enhance your life, to achieve success, to go out there, to face the world with courage, to face trauma with courage, you will be torn down by the crabs in the bucket. And that's what this is to me. I'm going to go there way before I go to some kind of grand conspiracy. They tried to say that she's making, Baphomet hand signals when she's literally doing sign language for love.
Yeah.
Which is something she did with Charlie. They're literally, the stuff they're saying with Erica is so appalling to me that I actually started unfollowing people that I've known for years that started going along this, because I had to quarantine my mind from this. And I'm not trying to close my mind to all the theories. That's what everybody's going to say. I'm open-minded, but my God, I definitely see the evidence going in the direction that I'm giving you, that this is about everybody trying to use this for their own agendas. And that's what's sick about it, is it can't just be left alone. The woman can't just grieve. Charlie can't just be laid to rest. We've got to concoct every possible ridiculous conspiracy that we can imagine to try to explain something that just was obviously an evil act done by whoever, that is going to have an effect that is not actually what the people that shot Charlie Kirk intended. Look what's happened as a result. And so I'm trying to tell people, how about we get out of Conspiracyville for 2 seconds and think about this? Why don't we focus our content on this? They didn't win. The terrorists that committed that act, whatever they were, and Charlie is dead and buried. Okay, so stop saying he's out living in the Middle Earth or some shit. The people that shot Charlie Kirk did not succeed. They've created millions of Charlie Kirks, millions of people out there that are like, you know what? I'm going to start having conversations now. I'm not going to run away from this anymore. I want to find out what the truth is. I want to start talking to these young kids whose minds are being manipulated by these psychotic, deranged teachers and school masters, right? And it's also inspiring people to try to find even more creative ways to spread the truth around and to speak that truth. And so I feel like we should look at the positives more than just the negatives. And that doesn't mean we should ignore looking into something that might be bigger than we first thought. I'm not trying to say we shouldn't have our minds open, but this is beyond people just asking questions. Wouldn't you agree? This is just beyond people having an open mind and going, oh, what if the reptilians invaded from, Krypton and shot them? Like, fine, but like, are we getting a little bit stretched out here? I think we should focus on the fact that whoever did this failed in their mission. Yes, they shot Charlie Kirk, and it's sad. But by shooting Charlie Kirk, what they really took a shot at was freedom, was free speech, was the act of having civil, peaceful dialogue. That was what they shot. The person who shot him saw Charlie as the big hero that he had to take down, or the big villain he had to take down to try to rise himself up, to try to be even close to a Charlie Kirk, which he never could be. So whoever did it failed, all right? And that's the thing. And that's what I saw coming from his wife. I didn't see Illuminati hand signs and her looking up. I had some woman say, why does she keep looking up? Why does she keep looking up? Is she looking at a teleprompter on the ceiling? I'm like, she's a Christian. I think Charlie's up there with Jesus. She's looking up to the heavens, you friggin' morons. Like, please just.
This is the other thing. This is the other thing.
Your cave.
Yeah. Like, to be a person of faith, people don't understand what that means and like what strength it can give you even in a time like this. Exactly. And or like, let's say you're being interviewed and you're laughing. What, you're not allowed to laugh? You're not allowed to like enjoy yourself too? I mean, my dad's wake, granted he was 93, he wasn't assassinated, but I'm sitting there shooting the shit, laughing with my friends, having a great time. I can hold both. I can be like, man, this is a sad, somber moment, and then seeing people and connecting with people and laughing and more of myself. Like, it's just, people are just trying to pick these things to come up with these conclusions that make no sense in the grand scheme of what it means to be a human being.
Oh, Erasmus, thank you for saying that. I was saying the same thing to somebody the other day. I'm like, I at my mother's funeral that I had to do online because I wasn't allowed to physically go in the presence of other people during the lockdowns to have an actual funeral. I never did have that, by the way. It was my funeral for my mother was a podcast that I did.
Wow.
Okay. So, but during that funeral, I told some jokes. I laughed about
How dare you?
memories with my mother. And then when my grandmother passed away, it was the same thing. Right. And so laughter kills tragedy. Like the fact that you think we're all just going to sit there and just like,
weep and cry
around on the ground and just cry hysterically, like anybody, that's not how it's going to be. And people that believe, I don't care what version of this you believe in, and believe that life in this reality is not the end, that consciousness goes on. However you believe that, whether it's from the Christian view, whether it's from some other view, I prefer more of a Walter Russell view or whatever, but it doesn't matter. If you believe that, you are not going to have the same level of despair as those people that believe that life is meaningless. You know what I mean? So you're not going to understand an Erica Kirk and how she's going to respond to this if you yourself have a very toxic relationship with nature, with reality, with the life and death cycle. You're not going to be able to see that. So that's why I'm saying people out there listening to all these social media influencers, don't forget this final point. Everybody's in this for clicks. Everybody wants clicks. When I did my show, I did one show about Charlie Kirk. And when I did it because I needed to just express my opinion about it. I wasn't sitting there trying to get clicks and trying to get new followers. I hope a lot of people unfollowed me after that, actually. I'm kind of getting sick of the comment threads these days. So I was doing it because it was just a raw human reaction about somebody that I, had been watching for about 12 years, that it was just a horrible thing to watch. And I shared my opinion. But most people out there are making this for clicks. They're monetizing their videos. They're trying to get fake bot accounts to come and like it so it looks like it's beefing up and getting out on the algorithms. And they're just playing this game. And I just see all this inauthenticity around it. And that's the real conspiracy, guys. It's not just the government that we have to watch out for. It's the propensity for human consciousness to dive into the abyss every time these things happen.
Well, speaking of, I guess, clicks and engagement baiting, and sensationalism, where are you guys at with like Candace Owens and the kind of continually this is the point where we all get accused of being paid Hasbara agents and Zionist Mossad agents and all the rest of it. But what do you make of like that narrative and like the knee-jerk Israel the Jew bad narrative?
Matt, you want to go first? Because you go first.
If I could just say something about the last comment about laughing at a funeral. I've officiated dozens of funerals and weddings. And guess what, people? People cry at weddings and they laugh at funerals all the time. So then doesn't make them Illuminati, okay? So I love that post you did, Dave. It was great because I've laughed at funerals. We've laughed horrendously just roaring laughter at funerals.
Yeah.
And I'll purposely write stuff about a person that when I'm officiating, it's laughter throughout the whole building. But then there's also tears, there's seriousness. And that's the divorce between reality and what people want to be real. It's a lack of being able to handle reality as it is. The reality principle that someone could laugh or smile at a funeral just shows how dehumanized and how good the media propaganda is, or the conspiracy propaganda. And ever since they legalized weed, conspiracies have gotten totally retarded. I mean, there's three dispensaries in every small town in America, and literally people, the conspiracies are full on retard these days.
People are turning into tweakers, man. They're tweakers. They're high and they're tweaking out.
Yeah. And you got to wonder, I mean, there's a lot of curiosity around that whole thing and how it affects people's perception of reality. But the reality principle always comes barging back in. As far as Candace Owens goes, that's an interesting thing to watch. Again, I haven't made up my mind about a lot of things. I'm still out for events in the past as well. Even 9/11 isn't figured out. Nobody has all the answers on that yet. And that was 20-something years ago, 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. And anybody who thinks, it was laser beams from space or directed energy weapons, they still don't know. Nobody truly actually knows what totally happened that day. And if you can't hold space for doubt, then your certainty will rule you out of the reality principle. You've got to be at least open-minded, but not so much that your brains fall out. But to close your mind off and say, this is it, that's all that happened. She laughed at a funeral. She's Illuminati. It's just ridiculous. Candace Owens, Ben Shapiro, interestingly moved right in to try to, get on the stage. I'm not a fan of Ben Shapiro. He's a squeaky rat kind of voice guy that I just can't stand. It's a personal thing, I guess. But as far as Candace Owens goes, what she's saying, and it seems to be, Jews in the tunnels kind of outlook. Everything is the fault of the Jews. Not to say that they don't have a part in some part of this grander conspiracy, but it's not the whole thing. Again, you can't just toss everything into one can and say, that's it. It's the Jews. It's all this. So it seems like her entire schema these days is centered around tying Israel into the explanation for pretty much everything. Again, what are you missing by doing that? How have you not done your research on the other secret societies, the other races that are involved? There's all kinds of shit going on at the UN with people from every country in the Barbara Marx Hubbard's prayer rooms and meditation rooms. What about those folks? And this is 170 something countries of people that have this sort of world religious view that's based around Marxism. Where's the details on that? How come nobody's pointing the fingers at people from Africa and Australia and other places that come to the UN and take part in these ritualistic behaviors of transhumanism and worship of the singularity that's coming, and all this stuff, sort of the technocratic angle as well. So yeah, I have seen what she's posted. I'm not inclined to say one way or another that she's absolutely right or absolutely wrong, because again, I hold space, and certainty is just going to drive a wedge between me and my own relationship with the reality principle. And sometimes the greatest thing you can admit to yourself is that you don't know what the reality is behind this situation. So leave some space, because you might still learn something.
Mm-hmm. Dave.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. The only thing I would add from myself, from my perspective, is that we must always remember that there is a way to know the truth and to know the facts of reality, and to only stay in a space where we just never know. We can never know. My only caution with that is that now we're in the middle, and we're not really looking and forging forward. Hopefully, I'm just saying that your mindset in that regard can lead you away from being able to use the faculty of reason that you've been given and to put the time in and the effort in to determine the truth. This is what I prove every single day in my dojo to these kids that have been told that truth is not something that you can really, who are you? You're just a little kid. You can't determine what the truth is. You're going to listen to the teachers. We're the ones that are the certain ones that you're talking about there, Matt, who are telling you this is what's real. Whereas on my mats, I don't treat them that way. I say, hey, we're in an experimental lab. I'm going to give you some conditions for your tests that you're going to be doing with each other to figure out reality, to figure out the truth, to understand it directly. So I believe that even though there's many things that indeed are mysterious, right? If you put the time in and you put the effort in, you can at the very least come much closer to the truth about these events that do have facts behind them. They are not just ethereal, unknowable, classified information. There's a lot of facts that you can actually dig up and you can find out and you can verify. The issue is, just like, who was it? Professor Anthony Sutton had said, he said there's three phases of truth. Or three phases of gathering information that can lead you to the truth. And you have sort of like the public knowledge level where everybody, everybody knows that Israel did this, or Trump did this, or Mark Carney did. Everybody knows this, right? And then there's the second layer where people go beyond the public mind and they go, all right, I'm going to actually do some sleuthing. I'm going to put a few facts together, right? And spend 5 minutes a day here and there and get some facts together. Well, they're going to get a little closer. But then there's like how to procure classified information or occulted information. There's a science behind doing that. And there's a way of doing it. And that is for the few. That is for the few that are willing to pay the price of the time and energy it's going to take to get that information. There's even practical ways of procuring formerly classified information through FOIA requests and all these kinds of things. There's the ability to triangulate your sources. There's the ability to compare and contrast with other events and notice patterns of behavior. There's the ability to follow money trails to a certain degree. There's definitely classified layers to it, but you can get a lot closer. And then there's when people make claims. You can say, oh, you've just made a claim, Candace Owens. Thank you very much. You're making a claim, and you're making it extremely affirmatively. So let me go and see if I can test your claim. This is real science now. And when you test the claim against the evidence available, you're going to find out right now people like Candace Owens are on the jump to conclusions, Matt. But they're using affirmative language to validate their theories and their questions. And it gets to a point where you see their audience is growing and growing and growing and growing, that you start to wonder. Now, this is something that would be classified right now, but I have a feeling we're going to find out more as to whether or not some of these influencers are actually being paid by these insiders, these deep states, these foreign government agencies, these foreign intelligence agencies, whatever it is. They're being paid to do this. If they're not being paid, they could be also psychologically captured, and they could be being used like the useful idiots that Stalin talked about as a way of passing on propaganda in the middle of this war. So I would just wanted to say that. I'll leave it there. For me, Candace Owens is somebody that, I started following a long time ago, and she did a lot of great work. And then I saw the change in the wind happen, very recently, and it's just been gradually declining. And the question is this something on her as an individual, that her psychology has gotten wrapped up too much into these conspiracies and now she's just gone kind of batshit? Or is there something more insidious behind it? Is there some funding? Is there maybe, some of these people are put into these positions, just like our mainstream media anchors are, just like our university professors are, where they're put in these positions, they gain a certain level of street cred, and then they really start pumping the agenda. I've seen it with certain Canadian influencers here in Canada. As the whole trucker convoy thing came down, there were some guys out there doing brilliant patriotic speeches and telling truthful facts about how the government had abused the citizens and the stuff with the vaccine and everything else, only later on to now be peddling straight up, indisputable neo-Nazi propaganda and trying to foment a violent revolution in this country, which gives the left or the media, whatever you want to call it, the weapon to say, look, we told you guys were a bunch of Nazis. So there's a lot of handshaking right now, and there's a lot of blaming and victim consciousness. And when I start to see that, I'm smelling a rat on either of two levels. The individual psychology of that person has become warped and rotten, or there's actual chicanery afoot, and there's your real psyops that we need to start looking into. But either way, what we have to do is get to the facts of the case. And what people like Candace Owens are talking about, she was recently just completely debunked again by her own argument with the release of this letter that came out, where she was talking about how there was some letter where Charlie was basically trying to run from his life from Israel because he's had a few questions about the government's decisions or whatever. I'm like, look, if Israel was going to take out somebody, it wouldn't have been someone like Charlie Kirk, who was one of the most aggressive defenders of Israel for years and years and years, been to Israel, friends with Benjamin Netanyahu, knows these people, right? And then they take him out because he's got there's 2 clips or 3 clips of him asking some questions that are legitimate questions. No problem asking those questions. But they wouldn't go after someone like a Candace Owens or a Nick Fuentes or a Jake Shields or any of these other, Stu Peters or any of these other, who are openly going in the direction of that anti-Semitic, anti-Israel stance and grooming millions of people to believe those old tropes. Well, I guess I'm sitting there going, for me, the facts don't line up to make the case that what Candace Owens' reality is the reality. And I guess you have to have had the time in to see it from that perspective. And in the end, I obviously have to say, I also could be wrong. But I still believe anybody out there with any brain cells left can go and compare notes, can go and do their research, and then you tell me what you think is closer to the truth here.
And also, if they were to take him out, wouldn't they have done it in a different way? I just feel like by doing it, if they did it in this way, it would be obvious to people that they did it, and so they wouldn't want it make it seem like it was obvious, and so they could have, especially if you have intelligence agencies behind you, that you would do it in a more subtle way. That's what I would think. If they're behind it.
Yeah, the argument from the other side would be, well, they wanted to make an example out of Charlie. Don't even ask a tiny question about one of the decisions that the government of Israel made. Like, that just seems a bit petty. I don't think that that's how it goes. I think that there's been far more vicious anti-Jewish, anti-Israel voices out there that are causing great damage and actually leading to violence against Jews. I mean, it's getting pretty crazy right now. And yet they go after Charlie Kirk. It doesn't make sense. It makes more sense that the people Charlie Kirk was trying to talk to, which would be these trans kids, and addressing all these issues that are what inflame this radicalized communist left in America. That's who took out Charlie Kirk. That makes more sense to me, right? And so, but yet, no matter what you say to these people, you can present all the evidence, you can give the testimony from Netanyahu, you can give the testimony from all these people, because they immediately just go, oh, he's a Jew, he's from Israel, he's Benjamin Netanyahu, he's this person, he's that person. We can't believe a single word they're going to say. There's no way to talk sense into them. So that's why we don't try to do that. But I just appeal to people's logic and reason and go, put your biases aside. What information have you been given? Where did you get it? And what if we find out that in this conspiracy movement, we've been sold a bill of goods for decades about what's really going on in the Middle East, the true nature of the real threat from that region, what's been going on with Israel, who these people are, what's happening, what happened in these events, in these wars, and these terrorist attacks. What if we've been getting lied to by our own side? And here's one final point I brought up to these people when you're getting into that whole Jew-Israel thing. I told this on Josh's show, I was saying, because he speaks to a lot of these patriots and conservative MAGA Q people, and a lot of those guys they have a very bad taste in their mouths about Israel and the Jews. And I just said, isn't it interesting that all the facts that you're going to ask these people to give you about Israel, none of these guys have been, they come from the left wing in Israel. They come from the left-wing media. They basically, like Dave Smith and all these people, when they source their evidence, it comes from the United Nations, it comes from Haaretz, it comes from left-wing media in Israel that would be akin to CNN-level propaganda. So isn't it funny that, and even the Jews that are there resisting they're pro-Palestine, they're all the thing, they're out there, they're left-wing Jewish organizations that are socialist at their core. So that means that those left-wing Jews in Israel despise the right-wing MAGA types, okay? Because they're antithetical to their own philosophy. Yet the right-wing MAGA types in America are getting all of their facts about what's going on in Israel from the left in Israel. Does anybody find that at all contradictory or suspicious when it comes to how they're concluding on what's going on in that area? And that was one of the big questions that drove me to actually do this last 2.5-year research campaign to try to see if there's something more behind it. And I'm at the point now where I think everything we've been told is a lie when it comes to what's going on with the conflict, with the history, with the region, and many of the figures that we've been taught are just the absolute devil's eye. And I rested it here. I said, look, I don't know for sure about Netanyahu. I don't have any real, what do you call it? I don't really have any investment there, but let's look at what the American media, the left-wing media, did to Trump and made him out to be the worst, most evil villain of all time. And of course, the people that have been observing that objectively realize that that's a lot of propaganda. Well, look at Bibi. He's a conservative. He's representing that side. I'm not saying he's perfect at all, but I'm just saying, isn't it interesting that when we get the information about him here in the West, it's akin to the exact same kind of rhetoric that you would get from the left-wing media in America about Trump. So just with that alone, is that enough for you to conclude on somebody and on what's going on in the region? It's also not enough for you to just say, oh, it's all ponies and rainbows either. I'm not saying that. I'm just trying to get people to think critically here and say, how do you know? Where did you get your information? That's all my question is. And for me asking that question, I've been getting absolutely mauled and people just hate it. But I feel like it's important that somebody's asking people to use their logic here, because the truth should be the goal. It shouldn't be just about being right. It should be about what is the truth. And what if we've been handed a bill of goods? And what if a lot of what we've been taught about this is total bullshit, you know? So that's just a question that has been in my head. And it took me a long time to get here, but it didn't come frivolously or loosely. It came from deep research and curiosity about it. And the more I started pulling on that thread, I just kept finding demonstrable lie after demonstrable lie. It's akin to the way CNN would tear up one of Trump's speeches about Charlottesville, or think of any of the things that we've shown. Oh my God, you took it out of context, you clipped it out, you made it, you know, it's so many of these things that have come out about this. And then when you see the big Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson's and whatever, and yeah, they have every right to question and put these theories out, but they're not getting confronted properly. And I think that the average person is going to have to start doing their own research and, you know, listen to both sides, listen to what I just said, listen to what Candace Owens is saying, and then do the work. And then you tell me what you think is the truth.
It really is curious to me, just purely observationally, how quickly the Jew and Israel blame fermented in this particular situation. And like, you make a good point, like Charlie had way bigger enemies than Israel and then the Jews, yet there was no magnetism towards some kind of, the Islamists did it, or this faction did it, or this people who he was more outspoken against. And like, yet there's something just within the collective that loves kindling and fanning this flame when it comes to Israel, like nearly like at the drop of the hat immediately. It's so curious to me, like, as to where that comes from and why that is, you know? And obviously that's a bigger story.
Well, I have a quick point on that if you'd like. And I was talking to Michael about this because he helped show me some sources. The reason I like working with Michael, by the way, is not just because I'm like trying to go with everything he says. He's an encyclopedia. So he just goes, okay, here's all the scholars. I've looked at both sides. Here's the best books. He's read them all 10 times each. And then he goes, go read it yourself. Like, he's never the kind of person that says, this is what I think, and therefore that's what you should think. He's just a dispenser of sources that you go look into.
Michael GPT.
Yeah. Exactly. Very few people actually go follow up. But I've been a student under him for a while in this and have gone and looked up the sources and read it, and it's mind-blowing. But one of the points he brought up about this was something really interesting about the history. We've been doing this on Unslaved. We did a whole thing on the Dead Sea Scrolls, looking into the origins of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and we're just going through all of it with a fine-tooth comb. And what's really, really interesting is where, like, a lot of people would like to say, oh, they're all just, they're the same, just kind of remixed differently, and they've been at war at each other with all these things. Well, the real war was a philosophical, foundational war about how we view reality, okay? And with Christianity and Islam, there's many differences, okay? Christianity came out of the Dark Ages. It went through the Enlightenment period. It toned down a little bit. But Christianity before that, that's a whole other ballgame than what we talk about as Christianity now. But it evolved. It reformed, right? Islam did not do that. And anybody that ever tried to reform Islam has been killed. They're apostates. We've seen Islam get nothing but more radicalized over these years, okay? But what's interesting about what unites Islam and Christianity is they both view this world as a dark, fallen world. And they view your body as a prison for your soul. And they view your liberation as only occurring after the moment of judgment or in the afterlife. So what they've done, and Matt, you did an amazing presentation years ago about dimensional madness, where you're kind of hinting at some of these elements about everybody casting everything into these other dimensions and not living in the real reality that we inhabit. Well, this is what happened in these religions. So the mission, the core premise under both of those religions is this world is fallen and it's ruled by evil. Your body is a product of that world, so your body is also fallen and evil. And all the sins are your body, the fallen evil body living in the fallen evil world, provoking you away from the God, which you can only commune with when you're dead and when you leave this reality. That is the premise behind both Christianity and Islam. If you really boil it down, where does that come from? That comes from these ancient Gnostic interpretations of reality that trace back to Egypt and before. Now, to bring it up to with a difference in Judaism, Judaism also came out of that school, But one of their reformations that happened, I believe, after they were living in amongst the Greeks, is that they adopted a different worldview. And they went, no, the Creator created us, they created our bodies, and it created this world for us. And it's our job to be gardeners of this reality and to make this world better. That is the dogma underneath real Judaism, okay? Now, there are different sects of Judaism. There are corrupted priesthoods within Judaism, just as there are in all these other religions. So we have to be careful with generalizations. But the core principle of it was to say, let's make this world beautiful. Let's make your life beautiful. Let's make you beautiful. That's the core difference. So when you have that belief system and you go and you're a small little tiny demographic of people that have had to huddle together, work together to survive being hunted, the pogroms, the genocide, the whole thing for a long freaking time throughout history, you eventually become a group that is very, close-knit, and you are going to fight for your life to preserve your culture and your people. If only Western men took one chapter out of the Jewish playbook of how to do that, we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in right now. See, that's the glaring contradiction that none of these anti-Semitic people want to try to admit, is that the fall of the West happened because we lost our confidence in who we are. We lost our unity. We lost the instinct to preserve our culture and fight for our people. And we said, no, let's give it away. And look what you've got as a result. And so now that we're looking at the Jews and going, they didn't do that. Or the Japanese, they didn't do that. Well, of course, we're envious of that. And also, who else is envious of the Jews? You got 55 Muslim nations surrounding a tiny little sliver the size of New Jersey with a government that has like 200 people in the government, right? And they have a society that has Arab people living with them, 2 million plus Arabs living in Israeli society. They have it's the only democracy in the area. And what did they do when they went and built Israel in that dust bowl? They turned it into something beautiful that is a sore in the eye of all these other nations that are living under the premise of that other philosophy I'm talking about, which is barbaric, it's poverty consciousness, it's victim consciousness, it's compete, take over. You want to talk about colonization? Look no further, right? And then, of course, that's going to be something that's the envy of their eye, and they can't have them getting showed up by this small little tiny group. And this is the one thing that I think really spurs on a lot of this anti-Semitism, focusing on the Jews, is the fact that they are so small, but yet they are so successful. And people go, oh, well, they're successful because of a conspiracy. And it's like, well, what do you mean? Like, they work together and they work hard and they work to get into positions of influence so that the government doesn't hunt them down again, and that they produce. They've benefited the cultures that they've been in, right? In many different ways. And then when you go with, well, what about all the Jewish names that I can list that are involved in the conspiracy and they run, BlackRock, or they got, involved this? I'm like, yeah, or some of these names that are out there calling for the end of whites and all this stuff, right? What is it? Is it the Jewishness that's the problem? Remember, the basic premise of what Judaism really is to try to make the world a better place. For if you practiced it for real, I mean. Well, no, the thing that they're missing is that we are in this situation where we've got a people that stuck together and they worked hard to get in those positions of power. And then other people were infected by this Marxist ideology, this left-wing communist ideology that I've shown in many of my presentations actually comes from the occult world. It's nothing new. It wasn't invented by Karl Marx. It's basically rebranded Satanism or Satanism. That's what it is. And so if those people have Jewish names that are speaking that language, and that's the language they're speaking, victimhood, fallen world, we got to centralize power, all these things, that's not Judaism, that's Marxism. So you've got left-wing Marxist Jews infected with that pestilence that are acting in concert with the conspiracy. That's the connecting tissue. Guess what? We can find it in Catholicism. We can find it in Protestantism. We can find it in Islam. We can find it in Jainism. We can find it in Buddhism. We can find the infection of these ideas infecting the minds of human beings. And I think it's important we all just grow up and realize we made a lot of this shit up. All these differences and all these different costumes and names and left and right and Jew and Christian. We made that shit up. And so now it's easy for us to go, well, those guys over there that are more successful than me, that did preserve their culture when mine didn't, it's easy to go, well, they're the ones to blame because they're winning, because they're successful. And that's why we hate them. And I think that's more prevalent than, oh, well, they're just acting to destroy the West. It doesn't work against their interest to destroy the West, guys. We're literally fighting the same enemy. They're the little Satan that Islam is trying to get rid of. Guess what happens after they get rid of Israel and they achieve river to the sea? It's America next. And if America goes, the West goes. And I don't know if anybody's seen Britain lately, but they're very close to what would be happening to every Western country if we keep following suit. So there's one little thing for people to keep in their mind about the reason why. And it's not, oh, because they have money and because they have this. It's because there's a reason that Christians hate the Jews. It's not just because they think they killed Jesus. It's because of the fact that they adopted a pro-earth worldview, whereas the Christians and the Muslims adopted this is a fallen cage of the soul worldview. And therefore, what happens when you operate off that premise? You don't try to make the world a better place. You don't try to make the world a peaceful place. You try to dominate with your ideology, convert everybody, and think about the afterlife. But what if you have an ideology that says, hey, we're not going to do that. We're actually going to work on making this world a paradise, making this life a paradise. Well, then you're going to get more paradise, right? So, I don't know, just some ideas to throw out there.
Interesting take, man. I haven't really heard that as the root of Judaism before, but I'd be curious to learn more for sure, because a lot of the common arguments easily thrown out against Judaism that, people just spew is that the roots of the Talmud and the Judaism is all elitism and perversion and, child weird stuff happening, like people point to the Goyim and all the rest of it. So like, how do you kind of, in your own kind of mind, balance and weigh those kind of ideas?
Good question. I knew it's a good one. What I would ask people with the Talmud, let's talk about that. Has anybody ever read the Talmud here?
I haven't.
Probably not.
Nope.
I didn't until I learned about this. Does anybody know how many books make up the Talmud?
A lot.
It's, I think, close to 80. Okay. You'd need a whole library shelf of big, thick books with small fine print in it in order to actually have the Talmud on your shelf. Does anybody know what the Talmud is? What the purpose of it was? It is basically an ancient Reddit thread. This is the best way I've heard it explained. It's basically an ancient Reddit thread that's been ongoing and is a debate platform for rabbis and Jewish scholars to debate and discuss ideas and different ways of seeing things and different perspectives, and to settle disputes within the Jewish community. Don't forget, the Jewish community has existed in almost every other culture that's formulated Western civilization. And so they've gathered a lot of information. A lot of the stuff in the Talmud is very ancient. And so the debates of the days 2,000 years ago are a hell of a lot different than the debates today. And so when you're not bringing that context, when you're reading ancient texts like that and understanding what the purpose of those discussions are, it's just like the way CNN chops up a Trump speech and they just pick Charlottesville, good people on both sides. Oh, he's literally the Führer. It's the same thing. Oh, they're talking about ritualistic child abuse in the Talmud. It must mean that Jews are all about ritualistic child abuse. Mm-hmm. When you actually read the entire passages in their context, you'll realize that's absolutely not the case. You'll also find out a lot of the stuff that's cited by these neo-Nazis is totally manufactured and doesn't exist in these books. So the only way you could find that out is if anybody actually did the study. And also, you got to have an understanding of those languages. You got to understand Hebrew. You got to know the Aramaic. You understand the connotations and the differences. And that's why you got to talk to actual scholars about it and not just go to, I don't know, some MMA fighters that are now talking about the Jews all the time, who've never read the Talmud, but like to post memes all over social media without context. So that's just one point about the Talmud. When it comes to child predation, this is something that has gone on in every culture on planet Earth. Nobody comes out of the abuse against children unscathed. So if you want to just say, oh, the Jews are into pedophilia and everything. Yeah, where's the number one consumption of pedophilia and child porn? It's in America, the Christian nation, as we're told, right? So, and then what about the priests in the Catholic Church? Are we going to talk about that? What about what I've exposed in my dark side of Tibetan Buddhism, with when people go and they hang out with these guys in Tibet. They find out it's basically a child grooming, and not all of them, but in these certain groups, there's an ideology of this pedophile grooming ideology. What about Islam? You want to go there? You want to talk about child predation and where we learned it, and the grooming gangs and the actual statistics where we have numbers and names and faces happening right now in communities all over the West, documented, not some ethereal thing where we found a scriptural text from 2,000 years ago that is going to ascribe blame to specifically one group as being guilty of that. So there's that. I can't remember the other point, but all I would say is the further you look into it, you'll realize these arguments that are given, just like when you're talking, I don't know, flat earthers or people that think space is fake, that you're dealing with people that are cherry picking information and formulating the theory they want to see. And that's where I got to caution people, is that the best way to stop this thing is to take the quote from Solzhenitsyn, where he said, I say this all the time, but it's where you have to start from. It's a good launch pad, where he's like, it would be nice if we could just point the finger at this one group and ascribe all of human evil to that group and make it our pariah, and then just rout out those evildoers and be done with it. But he said, here's the issue. That can't be done, because the potential for good and evil strikes to the heart of every single human being. And when you want to start pointing a finger at one group that you don't like for whatever reason, right? And making it a collectivistic argument, that's the other way I know this is bullshit, is you're not an individualist. You're not about freedom. You don't represent the values of America or the West by ascribing collective blame to a group of people, when we understand that evil strikes to the heart of every single human being as a potential. That means you have to go individually based when you're looking at crimes that take place. Now, you can see patterns in people that have certain foundational worldviews that inspire their terrorism or their barbarism. But then you can even see people in, say, Islam, for example, that there's billions of Muslims in the world that don't go out and do jihadi attacks. Okay. I mean, we do have a problem with the philosophy of Islam because of the fact that they have such a track record. For example, 47,000 plus jihadi terrorist attacks in over 70 countries only since 9/11. That's I don't think we can find that in any other group. Okay. So that is interesting. And what is it? Is it because of their genetics? Is it because of their race? No, it's because they're infected with a cult ideology. That's why. Same with the communist left. Same with the woke left. Same with the woke right. Same with the Process Church of the Final Judgment or Jim Jones. It's an infection of the mind that produces these things. So to ascribe it to a people because of a group and because of a genetic background, to me, is the most retarded thing you could possibly conjure up.
Damn. Matt, how you feeling?
Oh man, enjoying this. Yeah, I harken back to 2013, 12. I was one of those acolytes that got into the beginnings of the blame the Jew for everything phenomena that happened then. It was a early research period for me, but nonetheless, I had friends who were influencing my outlook on that. And, you know, I came out of it partly because of Unslaved and Michael's work, you know, that I realized that I can't just point the finger and say it's that group of people and that's all it is. It's a default mechanism. It's a break from reality. Again, you know, you laid out the math, Dave. The group is very small. The nation is very small. But I look at who started, you know, this sort of led me out, was who started Israel, who works together with Mossad and MI5. Mossad is MI5 and MI6. You look at the roots of Britain and the beginnings of Israel, the Balfour Declaration, so on and so forth, sponsored, paid for by British intelligence. And then you start to say, well, is this really, you know, Israel acting on its own and doing its own thing, or is it directed? But what was interesting to me is that so many, even friends, researchers, fellow researchers around that period, 2013, 14, you know, the greatest story never told came out, and that influenced a shitload of people with their views about Israel and, you know, Hitler being the good guy in this case. So that was a whole opposite end of what I was used to being bombarded with. But it's sort of a default position for a lot of people. And we've recently lost a friend that we don't speak with anymore because everything is the Jews' fault. You know, I can't even talk about Trump, can't talk about anything that the administration does. J.D. Vance, everybody is controlled by Israel. It's all controlled by Israel, Zionism. I sent her a copy of Michael's No Jewish Conspiracy, and she had a meltdown, literally. Absolute meltdown. But what's interesting with people that blame a certain group or target a certain group is when I started to look at their personal lives. Chaos. Absolute chaos. No order in their own life. So they need a scapegoat. It doesn't matter. Just the one that's popular and has been for decades is to point the finger at the Jew or Israel or whatever. But that's disingenuous because, again, it's not, with a lack of knowledge comes certainty, certain points of view that don't have validity. And if you don't do your research, if you can't hold the end open, that you don't know everything, especially when you first encounter it, that's really a psychological problem. People don't have the space or the capacity to study a myriad of facts, a myriad of books that oppose views of each other to try to find the middle. And there's even people who use the term woke left and woke right who are throwing Hermeticism out the door and saying it's all bullshit. That whole thing, that philosophy, it's Gnostic. They're calling Hermeticism Gnostic. So they obviously don't understand what Hermeticism even is, because it's everything but Gnostic in a sense. So, I would say that, again, facts take a long time to collect. Points of view, knowledge doesn't always come at once. In fact, my experience with knowledge is that it takes years to gain knowledge and the truth about things. And you have to have the patience. If you're going to call yourself a researcher, there's nobody I know that calls themselves a scholar, excepting very few, and some of you are among them. But if you're going to be a researcher, give yourself the space and the patience to collect the facts and to go out and experience the things you need to experience, to read the great minds that have come before us on whose shoulders we stand. And, you'll come to the truth eventually. It's the seeking, the path, the journey that is most important, not the arrival, because you'll get there eventually.
Thanks for sharing, man. Can't wait for all the shekels we're going to receive from this episode, boys.
I just got invited to go to Kiss the Wall next week, so I'm looking forward to that.
I'll be on the same flight, dude. When do I have to be in LA?
Well, BB's picking me up personally.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I think about this and it's like, if for people who don't have the time or maybe the desire, then I go, just shut the fuck up then. Just stay out of the game. Don't offer your opinion, to realize that you're not going to read all the books. You're not going to go down all the rabbit holes. You're not going to commit your life to the process of truth. Then just focus on what matters to you, really. Instead of just I feel like I need to give my opinion online because this other person I follow shared a meme and now I'm going to regurgitate it. Just admit that you don't know and then go back to doing what you're doing, whether that's your job, spending time with your family, knitting in the park, and be okay with that. But it's just everyone has this feeling I have to share my opinion. And it's well, you don't. And so have the recognition that you aren't educated, that you haven't acquired the knowledge, and be honest with yourself, and then just don't, or go through the process of really investigating, really learning, admitting that you maybe don't know everything, So it's just, I don't know, I'm at this place now, obviously I love truth. There's things I care about more than other things, but I'm not commenting on things that I don't really know about. I love having these conversations. I feel like I'm sitting in a master class hearing you guys speak, but at the end of the day too, there are other things where I want to put my time and my energy towards. And I think that's okay too. And I think people getting clear on their values and where they really want to put their time and energy is important, instead of just feeling like they're having FOMO of the online conversation on social media and well, I have to share something. And it's no, you don't. You don't. Do your thing. Focus on what you love, what you're passionate about. And if you're not really passionate about getting to the truth on every single issue, then close your mouth. That's where a part of me comes in and says that.
Yeah, well said, man. I mean, just the willingness to be a student for a prolonged period of time and don't fall victim to sensationalism and certainty, then come into this role where you think you have to spread this message that you actually haven't studied in any capacity. Any capacity, it's like learn, shut your mouth, and when you feel called, then speak. Like I agree with you for sure.
And it's easy to get caught up, right? I mean, it's easy to get caught up. That's the danger of social media. It's a collective experience. You can get caught up in a movement. It's them, it's that, it's over there, but one finger points, 3 point back.
And why the inner work is important, okay? The mindset, understanding the architecture of your psyche, having a regulated nervous system and have capacity where you can hold discomfort and uncertainty within yourself instead of this need to have to respond automatically every time. But how many people in the research community and the alternative community are doing deep levels of inner work? They are so lost in the external world and they get sucked into that and not realizing that there is this universe within, this way to know yourself on such a deep and nuanced level that the attention is not being put there.
Mm-hmm. And the problem is also, I think people get swept up in fanaticism when all of a sudden they believe that they've uncovered the enemy. Then they feel like they have this righteous sense of duty to go and push this message, like, some kind of missionary. And then, of course, we know that that's kind of detached from reality and the truth as well.
Kind of like the woke cult.
Yeah.
Right. That's why we call it woke. You're woke. It's critical consciousness, but not of the good kind. It's everything is evil. Everybody else but me. Let's find a whipping boy. For the woke left, it's white people. For the woke right, it's Jews. What's the difference? It's the same application. The same exact arguments they're railing against the Jews in Israel, even though I could easily go into and say, yeah, there's probably a deep state in Israel. The government is corrupt. The media is corrupt. There's corruption in the... Yeah, for sure. I mean, they got all kinds of socialist ideology coming out of Israel, okay? Because that's what you get in a democracy, right? But we still have the same problem in America. Definitely have the same problem in Canada and everywhere else. So it's like, why don't we just zoom back and go, hey, wherever we go, us humans with our traumatized psyches, there we are. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, you're going to find as many conspiracies as you want to find, because the real conspiracy is an inner conspiracy of each person not choosing to awaken the true voice of who and what they are from within, and instead install the voice of the crowd in your head, as we call it on Enslaved. Yeah. And that crowd in your head is the public mind that Bernays was talking about, that was targeted by propagandists, that is the target of these both communist and fascist and whatever-ist totalist ideologues are targeting, because they know that can be manipulated. I just read a brilliant quote as a podcast. I did the shortest podcast I've ever done. It's like 1 minute and 24 seconds, and I just called it The Reason Why. And I read this beautiful quote from Carl Jung where he's talking about basically the reason why you don't want any sort of collectivistic or totalistic ideology installed in your country. And he gets into how basically if you are joining the crowd as your way of thinking, you're reducing your potential for knowledge and insight drastically. Your IQ level just dropped drastically. And only the individual, like Walter Russell would also concur, is capable of the genius. Only the individual of the crowd is never operating at a genius capacity. There's zero precedent for this ever. It's always been wrong. It's always been led. It's always been violent. That's the other thing. It's one of the most violent institutions that exists is the crowd. And it's because of this. It's because Jung said, everybody drops their IQ to the level of an animal. Look at crowds. Look at the violence. Look at these protests. Look what's going on. Okay. Now that doesn't mean there isn't time for uniting and having civil action and maybe even defending your country. There's a difference there. That's where you got to bring in the warrior tradition and why that philosophy is so unique, because to collectivize to defend your country is a totally different ballgame than to collectivize around politics and ideas and philosophies. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought that's something to throw in here as well, is that when you abnegate your personal responsibility in this life, which is the only domain of control you have, when you give that away by saying, I'm a victim of this and I'm a victim of that, and that is rampant in this movement of conspiracy and alternative research, because we know there is an enemy. We know there are those out there that are seeking our ruin and destruction, trying to take advantage, try to steal. We know there's evil operating in the world, but that's no license to then just go and be the referee on every single event that's happening and be the expert master on every single thing. You need to be open-minded and humble. I mean, when this relation is in my head right now because I'm working in my martial arts studio, and you have ranking systems for a reason, right? You come on, you're a white belt, you're pure, you've never done it before, you're like a little baby deer, you've never wrestled, you've never done this martial art before, you're going to be new, you're going to have a lot of questions, and that's your role. White belts are there to ask questions. That's your role. If you want to learn, that's your role. That's your operation manual. Black belts have been there for a long time. They've already asked the questions. They're keeping questions going, but they've learned some things. And so when you have white belts sitting on the sidelines critiquing black belts about how they're doing things and saying, well, he should do this, or the drunk guy at the bar watching UFC with his buddies that's never even done a push-up in his life, let alone jumped into a cage with another man that's trained to kill you, they are the ones saying, oh, he should have used his jab more. He should have stopped the single leg. How's Khamzat Chimaev taking everybody down? Don't they know how to sprawl? Like, buddy, if you sprawled once, you'd probably have a heart attack. You shouldn't be talking right now. Okay?
Yeah,
Sit amongst warriors, the conversation is different. Okay? Sit amongst educated minds, the conversation is different. It's not about being right. It's about the truth. And that's who you should listen to. And you can tell who those people are. You should be able to detect who's here for the truth and who's here to be right. If you're just here to be right, you still haven't graduated psychologically yet, I'm sorry to say. And I've been there, and I still go there sometimes. I still devolve into that need to be right, and to be proven right, and to be vindicated. We all feel it. But you got to temper that with your higher knowledge, your deeper knowledge that tells you, look at where you are, man, in this vast cosmos, in this amazing, whatever this is, and you think you've got it all. You think you know it all. You think you're the one that has the one to cast judgment upon everybody. Like, you got to listen to that voice too, that's there to keep you humble when you're pursuing the truth. And that's what's been lost. That's why I don't call it a truth movement. When Joel was reading that, it doesn't exist anymore, because those people aren't the ones getting all the hits. Those are the dumbest people, are the loudest in the room, clearly. So don't listen to the loudest people in the room with the massive platforms. You want the people that are there earning their platform, that are there pursuing it with humility, that are there bringing on people that are there for the truth. So that's why I love the name of your show, because it actually clarifies this issue.
Agreed. Man. Yeah, it's interesting too that with what's going on in America, I often like to say, read what are the fruits? Look at the fruits of a tree, right? And in America, there's a debate now as to, is the government gone too far? Trump's deployed the military, but look at the fruits. DC cleaned up in 15 days. I've got friends who live in Virginia. I worked in Virginia for 10 years. And I'm hearing it is cleaned up. It's safe. 15 days. It wasn't an occupation. It wasn't a Nazi SS invasion with planes and simple troops, and it restored order, arrested 1,700, people, criminals, whatever you want to call them. But that little bit of action went a long way. And the fruits of it are, you're seeing and hearing from people in DC, on my end as well, that life is better. It's improved. And there's two kinds of revolutionaries in this world. There are those who will revolt or create a revolution, let's say, tear it down, the destructive revolutionary. And then there's those who, like founding fathers, are fighting for principles. And that's a kind of revolution that I think we need. And it's not a unified thing. It will never be unified. So all the people calling for unity in the New Age movement are deceived by the fact that you can't unify with something that's headed toward death and over the edge of a cliff. You have to know when to say, I'm not going to be with that. There is such a thing, and nobody's coined it yet, so I'll coin it right now. Pathological toleration.
Nice.
Okay?
I like
what
that.
we tolerate persists, and it's been said by greats. I think Dostoevsky might have even, commented on toleration. But if we continue to tolerate things, going toward the bad, and we can't react, we can't respond with the military, and it's not a military action when you're guarding a federal building or assisting federal troops. It's federal property. There's every right to do that. So at the same time, there's all this banter right now in the States, people on Facebook especially, older folks, left-leaning, he's sent it in the military, he's a dictator. It's all the same talking points, regurgitation, vomit. you know, but what's happening? Is it being cleaned up? Antifa running in Oregon wild, it needs to be dealt with. And if Michael were here, he'd say, bring back Vlad. I pray to Vlad at the altar every day. We need to wipe them out. Wipe out this infestation of, you know, those who would absolutely obliterate and destroy Western civilization, because it's a cancer. Walter Russell said in 1953 that communism is like an infestation of termites gnawing at the foundations of liberty, and they are infested in the U.S. government. A doctor friend of mine in 1967 picked up a hitchhiker on his way back to Montana, and he says, "Where are you from?" The guy goes, "D.C." He goes, "What'd you do in D.C.?" This is 67. He goes, "I was an FBI agent, but I quit." He goes, "Why'd you quit?" He goes, "Because all the leadership are communists."
Yeah.
This is his experience. 67, yeah. And in 64, "None Dare Call It Treason" was written. This comes back to the beginning. Edward G. Griffin. We have a common enemy. It's not, and it could be, as Dave said, very influential in Israel on the left, which is why the woke right is actually the woke left, only a mere reflection. So it's you got to be very careful these days with having an opinion and being so assertive when you don't have the facts and the knowledge to back it up. You know, use your intuition, guys. Use your discretion, and above all, develop freaking discernment, because otherwise you're going to invest in a theory that you think is reality, and there's nobody more deceived on the planet than to think the theoretical is real. Look at science. You know, look at the whole COVID thing. Have we learned nothing from trust the science? You know, we have to use our faculties, but in order to use them, you have to develop them. So practice, like a martial artist, practice your mental faculties as much as your physical faculties. And also know that metaphysics may not be the answer to a country rapidly devolving into protests and burning of cities and looting and rioting. You know, you may need a physical solution to deal with a physical problem. Metaphysics, as Christians and others have for centuries now just put their faith in the metaphysical as that will be the solution to all these problems. Well, what has been fixed? What has all your prayer and metaphysics done to fix actual problems like crime in DC? And then you're going to wig out when actual troops on the ground go and restore order. What are the fruits? Order. If the fruits are order, it's a good fruit, good cause, right? So we just need to practice a little bit and keep practicing. Nobody has a multiple black belt in knowledge, not yet. There are those who come along, you know, and they teach the rest of us, but we've got a long way to go as a species. And I'll just say this in closing with this point, is that, you know, humility is really a great position to be able to humble yourself in the face of things you do not know, because that's where you're really going to learn. And even if you're 75 years old, I've had people say to me, "I wish I could have read Walter Russell when I was 20. I would have saved myself a lot of years." Well, brother, at least you came to it. At least you came to something that gave you better answers in the long run. And so we can do the same. We can be humble, as old as we are and rigid as we are in our views. And what did Charlie Kirk actually leave as the greatest lesson, in my opinion? Try communicating. You don't have to take the leftist stance or the woke right stance and be so polarized that you can't communicate. Because 2 out of 3 marriages in 1989 in my communications class ended in divorce, according to my teacher back then. And he said, "You know why?" I said, "Why?" He said, "Communication. People don't talk." So learn to talk, learn to communicate, and above all, keep an open mind, stay humble, and the universe will have a way of giving you the knowledge that you seek.
Thanks, Matt. Beautiful, man. I want to get some commentary on whether it's organic or whether it's also fermented, the potential for a large-scale right-wing Christian revival, and if there's any caution in the wind that should be thrown in that capacity.
Well, my quick thoughts on that, and I think this is why people should go check out what we've been doing on Enslaved with this, is deep diving into the history of these religions and looking at the pros and the cons. We're not just there throwing mud. We're there trying to say, okay, there's been elements of these religions that were added later over time that have been changed from their original intentions, right? We know that as our media has become infiltrated, as our education system has become infiltrated with these ideologues, right? Then why wouldn't we also investigate our houses of religion? I did it with the medical community and said, hey, the medical community has become infiltrated and corrupt by these types of ideologues that are anti-human, that are, basically trying to use their position of being the holy medics as a way of gaining power, as opposed to actually doing what a medic should be doing. And we can see this over and over again. So we can assume that this can also happen in religion, although many people who are very dogmatic refuse to believe that, because it chips away at their foundational belief that these religions have been preserved perfectly by an outside divine force. So therefore it's untouched and it's untainted. And you talk to the average Catholic, they're like, well, this is the real Christianity. It's been preserved by Archangel Michael and the whole thing. And
I mean, this was kind of Charlie had this position in many ways.
Yeah, of course. Charlie was a Christian. He was an evangelical Christian. So Erica is a Catholic, whereas he's a Protestant evangelical, as much as Candace Owens likes to pretend otherwise, because she recently converted to Catholicism. So therefore, of course, Charlie was giving her, oh, I really wish I was a Catholic instead, of course. But either way, and I don't take that. I'm not slighting Charlie. Everybody, we know that there's a huge movement of that already in America. It's part of the founding of America. There are many that would say, oh, America was a Christian nation. Charlie Kirk would probably say that. It was founded by Christians, etc. Whereas, people that dig a little deeper will realize, well, a lot of the founding fathers were actually deists, and they actually, in people like Thomas Paine and many others, were like, yeah, I'm not part of any of these religious groups, their religion became America. That's what it really did. And, some of these guys were in the Masonic tradition as well, which also cannot be wholly thrown into just, oh, that's all just evil and everybody in it is evil. Got to be careful with that also. But about the Christian revival, I do have this concern that, being raised a Christian and doing the research that I've done, and I did a really fun show with you guys on my take on Christianity. We won't rehash that here. People can listen to it. Where I'm trying to say, hey, there's a different way of looking at it that actually cuts through the dogma, cuts through the division, cuts through the fact that there's over 70,000 denominations of Christianity that are all at war with itself. And then think of all the religions in the world that also have those different splinter sects that are all at war with themselves. And then put that together with the fact that they're at war with each other. And you wonder why there's so much bloody war on this planet. There's a way to resolve it, which is a correcting of the premise, the correcting of the view of the religion. But the type of Christianity that is being brought back right now is a totally different ballgame. It's actually, in my opinion, a devolution backwards into a more, it's almost like a Dark Ages version of it, and a very dogmatic version of it, which I think can be very dangerous, because here's the problem. We've been ruled by theocracies of all kinds historically. So we have plenty of historical data to go off of here. So this could even go to Christians who are like, I don't like what you're saying right now because you're attacking my favorite one. I'm like, I'm not attacking. We're just going to look at history objectively, okay? Where if we've been ruled by theocracies, you might say, oh, there's lots of law and order, like what you were talking about, Matt. But here's the problem. The law and order is based off the theology, and anybody that disobeys that theology is the target of that law and order, right? Whereas if you make the standard based on something like a constitution, based on something that isn't theologically based, then you can have something where there's a separation between church and state. You can have the freedom to practice your religion in that country. You can still have law and order. And the only thing that needs to be changed about that whole freedom to practice religion is if your religion, be it communism, because that's a religion, or be it fascism, or be it Islamism or extremism or any of these things, if it causes violence, mayhem, and is working to overthrow the country and turn it into a theocracy, which is basically just a word for a cult, then that's not part of what we're talking about with religious freedom. You can't use your religious freedom, just like you can't use your free speech to call for someone's death. You can't. That's an incitement to violence. That's not free speech. And actually, I should say really quickly about that, there's a difference between the government domain over free speech, which is what the First Amendment is talking about, and private citizen discussion about free speech. If I'm a private business owner and you walk into my dojo and you start calling me fascist, Nazi, all these friggin' names, whatever you want to call me, and then you start calling my students these names, I have every right to kick you out of my dojo because it's a private business and you're disturbing my business, and therefore I have the right to kick you out of my business. If it's the government coming in and saying you're not allowed to say these scary words and we're going to censor you on social media, like in the UK, we're going to send cops to your house, a couple teenage girls are going to come to your house wearing hijabs, and they're going to arrest you for saying words. That's where the dominion of free speech and the discussion of free speech is what is the government's power when it comes to that? And I think that's where we get our wires crossed. People go, you blocked me on X. And yet you're a free speech, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I have the free speech to shut you down if you say shit that I don't like in my comments. You came into my lawn, you started pissing on my lawn, I can kick you off my lawn. If the government says I'm not allowed to say it and you're not allowed to say what you said and I'm not allowed to make the decision to block you, that's the discussion about free speech. So just want to say that. But just back to the Christian revival thing, the concern I have is that we're going to trade one form of tyranny for another. We have short-term memory. Most Christians, I'm going to say it, have no idea the origins and the premises of their religions and the theological debates that have produced the current form of Christianity compared to the original form, compared to the forms that were borrowed from and stolen from to create that religion that preceded it. Nobody has that information unless they spent the time in, right? So if you're going to say, let's rebuild America under a theocracy and make it a Christian based, we're going to bring it into the law and all of that, I've definitely got alarm bells going off about that. And I could even on another day have many agreements with Christians, right? Because many of the values in Christianity I share, right? But there are many values I don't share. Like I'm kind of sick of this turning the other cheek bullshit because we've turned so many cheeks, we don't have any cheeks left, and we're getting totally raped and pillaged. And that's not, I don't think, what the commandment from on high was supposed to be interpreted as.
I mean, that's kind of what Trump got blasted for a bit when he's like, I don't agree with Erica, in terms of like, I hate my enemies, like.
You know what's funny, Joel, about that? I have a very, I was raised by my grandmother and whatnot, and I always have that very, kind, charity, Christian heart with things. And I'm like, yeah, we should, my instinct is that we should find a way to find peace. And but then the other side of me is like, no, I'm definitely, what Trump said there, I'm with him on this. Absolutely.
Pay-per-view live hangings, bro. Pay-per-view live hangings.
The tolerance you were talking about earlier is what got us this. And guess where that tolerance came from? It came from the conservatives. It came from the right. It came from the people who are supposed to be what does a conservative mean? Supposed to be conserving something. What are we conserving? We're conserving traditions, values, morals, laws, law and order. These are the boundaries, right? And now that can also go way too far and become too draconian, right? But the conservatives weren't even conservative light. I don't even think there's been conservatives ever, really. Like they keep giving ground over and over and over. This is a point Michael was making on my show, and he's so right. The conservatives gave ground, especially the Christian conservatives, because of the meekness and we got to love everybody and our job to save everybody, and we're going to turn the other cheek and forgive our enemies. And then a Christian would say, well, forgiveness happens after justice, so you can't throw off forgiveness. It's like, really? Where's the damn justice, man? We've been waiting thousands of years, and all we do is keep giving ground to the point where, look, you're naming streets after Muhammad right now in Western Christian countries. You guys have been turning so many cheeks, you're not even Christians anymore. Does that make any damn sense? So there's weaknesses in the philosophy, and those weaknesses come from misinterpretations and misunderstandings of the original genuine article that came well before Constantine came along and made his little particular remix of the thing, right? Mm-hmm. So that's where I go to, as I say, and I did a whole series on my Substack where I did the Bible Decoded, and it was an analysis of Christianity to say, we don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but if you want to bring Christianity back as an identity in the West, as a cultural thing, I actually think that could be a positive thing. There could be benefits to that on a cultural level. But what kind of Christianity are we going to bring back? Is it going to be the dogmatic, literalist, focus on the past and the future only kind, which is what it is? Or is it going to be more akin to its original roots in Judaism, which is let's make this world a better place, as above, so below, as with the Hermetic roots of it that come from Egypt and before, and possibly even the fallen world of Atlantis and the lost ark of knowledge, right? So if we're going to resurrect religion in general, let's read some Alvin Boyd Kuhn. Let's read some Walter Russell. Let's read some Nikola Tesla. Maybe even throw a little bit of Bruce Lee in there. And some of these thinkers that are able to basically say, we can take the best parts of what was handed to us by our ancestors, and we can actually have real unity without political theocracy, have freedom, but with law and order, and have these a much better system that was what allowed some of these civilizations like ancient Egypt to last for thousands of years. Do you know that Egypt as a civilization was so ancient in its time that in Egypt, being an ancient Egyptian scholar was a job? That's how old it was. You were living in ancient Egypt, and it was so much more ancient that you were a scholar of ancient Egypt in ancient Egypt. That's how old it was. What allowed a civilization like that to last without falling apart as long as it did? America's only hundreds of years old. Western civilization is maybe thousands of years old, if that, right? How long, so we got to think about this in a bigger perspective and realize the dangers of trying to awaken a radical dogmatic theology to combat a radical dogmatic theology. It's not going to work out in the end. And so we got to think differently. And I definitely think it's a concern we have to face, and we have to face it very soon.
They're both collective approaches, right? I mean, you asked the question, what made the West so great, especially in the last 250 years? And look at the research around the individual. Is it not the individual, the one who breaks from the collective, who broke from the collective of martial arts and created a movement that was beyond anything anyone had ever seen? Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
Who breaks from the sciences to become a maverick? It's the individual. And you can look at the natural knee-jerk reaction for most nations who face traumatic situations is to go back to a collective approach. And it's that very approach which caused it in the first place. So safety, you find comfort, you can dissolve or go toward dissolution of yourself by joining the crowd or the collective movement. And then the collective answer is always the same: destruction. But it's the individual that steps away from the collective that brings new knowledge back to that collective and gives it to them, which elevates the collective, creating more individuals. And that's what the experiment of America is so wonderful for. And why I consider myself a patriot is to the movement an importance focused and placed upon the rights of an individual to choose his religion, how he speaks, what he thinks, to own his own firearms so that collective tyrants can't force his mind to join their collective view. As Thomas Jefferson said, I will make eternal war against all forms of tyranny against the mind of man. Eternal hostility. And that's how I feel. Nobody in this world is going to tell me how to think or feel. And if I join a collective, I'm literally murdering myself to be a part of it. And all those gifts that you could have, all the offerings that you could give to that collective by being an individual, which would lift that collective up to become individuals themselves, is lost, because now what is polarized and tolerated in you as a collectivist is no longer available to bring the solutions that bring the new knowledge in order to step up the progress of the human race in a way that's viable, in a way that's usable, applicable, and benefits everybody, including most of all yourself.
Well,
I love you guys.
So good. So good.
This
Hey,
is great.
Dave, I had a reminder while you were speaking on the theology points. I'm pretty sure I heard in a recent Unslaved podcast, I think it was the Cardinal Muhammad one, Michael raised the point that, back to the Candace Owens thing, that her husband is from a specific sect of Christianity called SSPX, which is the Society of Saint Pius, which has a particular deeper hatred against Jews. Many of the clergy are Holocaust deniers, and they blame the Jews primarily for, people not converting to Christianity, the death of Jesus, etc. So that could be something that's influential in Candace's rhetoric as well.
Yeah, good point. I thought of that too, like where the influence is coming from. That could definitely be it. It's interesting. People should actually go, what you just said with that particular sect, go and dig on that one.
Yeah.
And you'll find the connection. You'll suddenly start to realize the Vatican rat lines, the Nazi SS, the creation of the experiment in Germany through the Thule Society, the occult level that's going on in the Vatican and Rome in that history, the deep occultism buried within all of these traditions and religions that nobody knows about, only the top people know about, and that within those different groups and cults, there are these little splinter sects and groups and cults. That's not to be surprising information for people. And that there's a war been going on in the Vatican for a long time between these different groups. And Michael did a good article kind of giving that history in his it's called The Red Papacy. We did some shows on it, and he gets into that as well. And one other point I want to bring up too about how the Vatican helped to create radical Islam, which was the point of that show, by the way, is this interesting history about the connection between the Nazis and the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. And that whole thing really tied together with me when I realized that when everybody learned about Operation Paperclip, they learned about how Nazis were being sent to different parts of the world like Paraguay and maybe Switzerland and Canada and other places. And they kind of got smuggled into America, into the space program and all these different things. But they don't talk about how many of the top creme de la creme Nazi officials and Thule Society officials went to Egypt and converted to Islam. A lot of people don't know about that, and they don't know about the cozy relationship between the Islamists and the SS Nazis. And we're not talking about the Nazis people think. We're talking about the actual Nazis. And that whole thing you can connect into the history that's gone on in the Vatican a lot of people don't know about. And so, huge rabbit hole. We could do a whole podcast on that, but we did go through it step by step, very methodically over the past few months on Unslaved.
Thanks for sharing, man. Dave, I know you got a martial arts class you got to run to shortly. Do you want to drop a closing statement? And then Matt, Dave, you can run if you want. And Matt, we'll get one for you if you want to wrap a bit longer to close this one out with us.
Sure.
Yeah, well, first of all, guys, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate these roundtables. You give me a voice. I'm so happy to see what you're doing with your shows. And Matt, I read your amazing articles you've been producing on Substack. People need to follow you. Keep doing what you're doing, brother. You guys are awesome.
Very, very AI heavy articles, right, Matt?
The AI God has spoken.
It's NI that wrote that shit.
Natural intelligence.
And your mom is a psyop. Your mom is
exactly. Psyoping the psyops.
Yeah.
All I just want to say is, think for yourself. It's your life. It's your mind. Don't let everybody pull you so easily into their way of seeing things. You can learn so much from everybody. Look how we're learning from each other right now. It's a beautiful thing. But come to these discussions as an individual mind that is alert, that is attentive, that is curious, that is inspired to go out and research and think for yourself. That's the greatest act of freedom you can have. It's the freedom they can never steal from you, no matter how many laws they try to invent to try to make it that you can't have that freedom. That is the primal freedom that was gifted to you by nature, by God, by spirit, by however you want to view that. It is yours. It is your property. You should defend it, and you should defend it at all costs. Because right now, that is what's on the chopping block. And this is going to happen on an individual level. And that's why if you start with your own mind and your own life, just remember you got enough to worry about with that, then you are contributing to the greater effort to try to liberate the world and liberate the West from this pestilence of tyranny. And the greatest act of tyranny you can commit is first against yourself. So just don't allow your mind to do that. Listen to these voices. Listen to the people we've critiqued today. Listen to the people we've promoted today. Think for yourself. And I think that just that whole mindset alone can save us a hell of a lot of trouble with what's coming. So just want to say thanks to everybody. Thanks to your amazing show. And let's do it again sometime.
Oh, man, absolutely. Thank you so much, Dave. I'm going to drop all your specific links in the show notes for anyone that wants to follow David. And that is your 11th appearance in Here for the Truth, man. I think that's nearly 1/11 of our episodes.
I love that number too, so it's a good one. Well, thanks, guys. Be well, and we'll catch up soon.
Take care.
Yeah,
man.
take care,
Bye-bye.
David.
Thanks, David.
What a
What a guy.
gangster.
He is an OG for sure.
For sure, man. Matt, man, I just appreciated your voice so much in this conversation. It really helps to, balance out the knowledge drops from David with the return back to the wisdom within self and the importance of the individual. Yeah, man, what do you have to say to wrap this one up?
Well, being the grandpa of the bunch, I'll just say it's 54 years and well over 30 years that I've been into the research community, and that's the real thing. I'd just like to say that for thousands of years, we've had collectivity as the default program for humanity. Only in the past several hundred years has the individual even began to emerge. So, and what have we seen come from it? We've seen some of the greatest inventions, some of the greatest technological progress. Obviously, we've got to temper our progress with that active spirit that can, keep control of it so it doesn't become toxic in its use. Just stay on the road, stay on the path, keep studying, keep reading, study the mavericks, study the giants, but don't worship any of them. Instead, learn to become a giant yourself and do wonderful things in your life, and, set high goals that take years, and have patience, because knowledge will come with the effort. And that's the beauty of the universe, is that every step you take to fulfill your desire, the universe by law has to step towards you. So keep at it.
Well said, Matt. The patience thing, I think, I definitely have learned a lot from getting involved with gardening and connecting to nature, because it's like you plant something and you're like, give me fruit right now. And you're like, no, that's not going to happen. It's like a 2-year-old tree. You need to wait like 4, 5, 6 years. But then to see, 3 years into this project, that we planted some older trees a few years ago, and then to see the harvest that we have, like, it's so fulfilling. And I just, again, nature as the teacher has definitely grounded me more and has made me appreciate patience, and has also, made me focus more on the things that I really, really value, and to really cut out the fat from my life. But again, it's an individual thing. Like you said, every individual needs to know themselves as best they can and get clear on their values and put their time and energy towards those values, and not get sucked into anything that isn't driving their life forward. And I think, way too many people, I think, are getting lost in the digital noise, and they're not using the time and the energy to push other things in their lives forward. And so I think that's something to fight against, and to have the mental discipline, the spiritual discipline to really get clear on where you want to put your time and energy in your life.
Exactly.
And to be okay if other people aren't doing the things that you're doing, because it's maybe not the same value.
Yeah. Don't take refuge in the collective, because you won't find it. You'll find the dissolution of what you thought you knew as yourself, and that's why they call it a superego, authoritarian, just voice that the mob becomes the conscience, and look at what it's capable of.
Yeah. No, beautifully shared.
The worst.
I love that analogy, or not that reality for you, Erasmus, because it kind of seems like you started planting that fruit forest around the same time we started planting the seeds of this partnership and Here for the Truth as well, and just throughout this journey, like, understanding real prosperity happens over time. It happens as a result of consistent effort. It happens as a result of consistent love, even when there is no fruit yielding, even when things feel difficult, even when new experiments have to be undertaken,
And even when trees die.
That's right. And I think it's such an important message in this, culture that, is promoting more and more this idea of instant gratification. And we keep falling under this false idea that real fulfillment, should be an instantaneous project. And it just absolutely never is, man. It's not in terms of my closest relationships. It's not in terms of my entrepreneurial endeavors. It's not in terms of like anything that I really turn my consciousness and attention towards in life. And that kind of speaks to, I think, the real key to love, man, is being willing to love for an extended period of time, being willing to extend love despite hardships, despite circumstances that normally might throw you off course. But the fruit of love on the other side is just, the greatest form of abundance that I could possibly ever experience and imagine.
Yeah. I looked at Sophie this morning and I told her, I was like, I love you more now than I ever have before, and it's like the sticking with something and growing through things and communicating and honoring one another. Like, it's just like, I can't imagine on day 1 or day 2 having that love that I have for her now. And it's just a testament to, it's a testament to everything that we were just talking about. And so I'm so grateful for that. And I'm happy I didn't check out and run at times when parts of me wanted to come in and go, no, this is too much. Get out, go be on your own. So
that's what's beautiful about nature, brother, is it's, as you work with it, it multiplies.
Yep.
One kernel of corn can plant 1,000 more, and that's how love is. It's a multiplication, and, you'll see the fruits of your labor in your trees eventually. And
well, yeah. And we're already starting to see in the last month, the last year, I've been working with my friend, someone who's become a friend of mine, Eric, who's like a gardening wizard on so many levels. Mm-hmm. And it's been awesome to see, like, just in the last year what has transformed. But based on what you said, I have this woman, Manju, who's helped us out in the early years of our garden. She gave me this one little, I don't even know what the plant is. It's a succulent, but she gave it to me because it has a smell to potentially keep like gophers away. And so I forgot that I had planted a single cutting from it. I planted it, and then, like, I don't know, like a year later, this whole thing grew. And then from that, when we did another big garden day and we did a workshop, we took cuttings from that and planted it in different places in the garden. And then those are going off. And then from here, I'm going to give cuttings to my neighbors, and then they're going to use it in their property. And so it's like from this one little cutting came all these other plants that are just going to continue to multiply. And for me, that is so cool to witness.
Absolutely. Now apply that to mentality and to spirituality. It's the same process. So knowledge is a mental, and then the spirit itself, the knowledge of the spirit. So that's the potential of the human being, that it can have unlimited multiplying power, But you have to have fertile soil. No good plant ever grew in a collective soil.
And that fertile soil, to me, is the foundation of truth. The truth is what will cause the multiplication down the road. It's not a foundation built on lies and built on shortcuts.
Yep. And it's not built on collectivity either. It's built on the individual pursuit of perfection, which we may never achieve, but that keeps us looking for it.
Yeah. This has been an epic freaking episode. I'm so stoked that we brought you guys here and got you guys on together. I got no doubt people are going to hopefully feel much more grounded, much more inspired, and hopefully a little bit wiser on the other side of this. Matt, so much love for you, bro. Thank you so much, man. I call you a brother despite you being a grandfather, but that's, you're an elder brother to me, and that's kind of how I relate to you. And yeah, bro, lots of love. You're dropping some pretty consistent articles on Substack at this point in time, right?
Yeah, and working hard in the band project, Order of the One. I'm enjoying a return to music and upgraded the whole studio. Finally got my lighting right. So,
nice.
I look like a vampire for a couple episodes there, but, I appreciate you guys very much, and I'll see you at the Mason's Lodge later.
Perfect. Awesome. Drinks are on me. I'm getting paid a little more than you guys. I'm just saying.
So,
Order of the One is the band, and people can find that on Spotify, Apple Music at this point in time. Amazing.
And orderoftheone.com.
Orderoftheone.com, and we'll drop your Substack in there as well, for sure.
Sounds great, buddy. Appreciate that.
All right, Matt. Take care. Everyone else, thanks for listening.
Big love, guys.
Just in absolute awe, and definitely sitting in the humility that Matt speaks of when it comes just to having been able to be privy to greatness in that capacity. And, those two for me really are just, some of the creme de la creme that I'm aware of when it comes to grounded truth seeking, personal responsibility, striving for facts, striving for objectivity, striving for truth. Yeah, just having both of them having such a deep spiritual cause as well. And just, the phrase good men really comes to mind.
Yeah, they are truly good men, and I echo everything you said. I have utmost respect for them. And again, I'll repeat it. It was a masterclass, sitting there, listening, observing, and grappling with the things I was hearing too, and trying to see, okay, where do I stand here? What are my thoughts? What are my beliefs? And I just feel honored to be in the dialogue and be in the conversation, and to bring this information and this knowledge and this wisdom to our audience. So we hope you get a lot out of it. Yeah. Let us know what you think, obviously, whatever platform that you're on. And if you're on our email list, you can respond to when the newsletter goes out. But yeah, just want to thank you again, all of you that are listening to us, that are supporting us. Really, really appreciate everything over the years, and we're not stopping. We're going to continue doing our thing.
Yeah. Guys, David Whitehead himself is the special guest inside our membership community, Friends of the Truth, later this month. So please, if you feel called, come join us for October and be introduced to some of the most awesome people that I know in my life, and come join us for 6 calls per month. And at the end of this month, members will have the chance to have a private Q&A with the group, with David himself. You can join at hereforthetruth.com/FOTT.